And thanks to Howdy for having us. This has been a really good community event. I think this has been awesome. I try never to stand between people and food, so I'll be pretty quick. When the Howdy guys reached out, they said, we want you to come down and talk about building bots for brands. So this presentation is my hopefully decent effort at trying to sort of provide some value to bot builders and just talk a little bit about what we've learned working with Fortune 1000 consumer brands in the bot space and more broadly in the messaging space. So, this presentation will come in 3 parts. You can choose when you want to go to the bathroom or you could just leave now. It's up to you. I think it's important for us to talk a little bit about some of the other things that we do as a company because it'll provide some POV on how we think about bots. I think I've got a couple of similar takeaways to some of the stuff that you've been hearing earlier this morning, particularly from the Poncho guys and the last presentation around design. We'll talk a little bit about how we talk to brands about designing bots and defining strategy, and then I'll walk through a couple of examples, all of which are in market and you can try. And then if I finish up with enough time, I'll take some questions. So we launched a platform for brands in mobile messaging in January of 2015. I'll go through some of our products, but we've been lucky to work with over 100 of the world's top consumer brands in the space. And the Poncho guys are going to see a very familiar slide here, right? So every time there's a shift in consumer attention, every time there's a shift in the way media infrastructure works digitally, brands tend to need partners and technology solutions to help them navigate the landscape, create native content experiences, distribute that content in that channel, and then measure the results of their efforts. And our general thesis when we launched our platform was, let's sort of be that, right? Let's try to stitch this whole thing together for brands, bring it into one place, help them figure out what executions they can do, where they should do them based on the audiences they're trying to reach, what their goals are, and help them measure the results. And so to date, we have a set of products. They're all kind of backed by a content management system and analytics platform. But at a high level of abstraction, we make a suite of iMessage applications, which we just started launching in the last couple of weeks. Our original product was a branded emoji keyboard, which all the tech builders in here are going to insist is not technology, but from the consumer adoption point, it's been really interesting. And then we also, we've been building conversational UI executions since Q1 of 2015. We started working with the guys at Kik early on. I would say that our splashiest sort of successes in the mobile messaging space to date have really been around visual communication. And I bring this up because I think, consumers pulled emoji keyboards through the system more than we pushed them out with brands. We launched 100 of these in 12 months, drove 120 million emoji shares, all peer-to-peer, really kind of sitting at the top of the funnel for brand marketers who are looking for social engagement. They're looking to sort of play in the space. They're looking to, collect some initial data on how mobile messaging works. I apologize, but we are at least partially responsible for Kimoji. So, a lot of brands, based on that success, when, bots came out as sort of the next thing, all of our brand partners came to us and said, okay, we've done rich media, we've done emojis and stickers and GIFs, and, maybe we've done some, light bot stuff, but most of it has been structured around getting consumers to sort of engage with, this branded emoji content. The bot space is kind of growing. It's getting more complex. There's more technical capabilities. We want to build a bot. And I think there's kind of been this rush, particularly in this year, for a lot of brands to say, bots are a thing, bots are growing, lots of brands are in bots, we need a bot, we want it, sort of fast, cheap, and good. And I think that's been problematic for the space. You kind of hit this, sort of like peak level of hype, and then, it sort of dips down to the trough of despair. I'm sure you guys all kind of know that graph. And I feel like, for some brands, it's kind of hangover time. They've got out, they put something out in market, they don't really know how to measure it, but they just sort of ran to get in the space really quick so they could sort of be first in market. And I think that phase is largely passing by. And so when brands come to us now, we try to kind of help them think through what they actually want, rather than just like, I need a bot. So we look at this because most of the people that we're dealing with are marketers. And so we try to put it in language that they understand. So, when we look at bot strategy, we kind of think about the consumer lifecycle. You can probably do one of these at a time. You probably can't do all of them at once. And so, originally, when a brand brings us in, like, we want to make a bot, and we want it to, we want to talk about new products to new audiences, and we also want to talk to our existing audience, and we want them to engage and share content, and we want them to buy stuff, and then we want them to be able to manage their accounts in bots. We kind of like do a little bit of sort of paring down and pulling back, right? So, the first kind of layer of extraction is where in the consumer journey are you going? Are you trying to access new customers? Is this for your existing audience? Is this about social sharing and engagement? Is this a social desk? Is this CRM desk? Is this product? Are you looking for ROI? Trying to define those metrics up front helps you craft where you're going to be. I'm going to sit on this slide for a second because I think this is really, really important, which is that I think that there's kind of a narrative in and around the bot space that this is a race to deeper and deeper technical capabilities, and I would argue that there is not nearly enough conversation, effort, or energy being put into bot design and content. And we find when we execute these that we spend 90% of our human capital and effort thinking through script writing, thinking through rich content that we can put inside a bot, thinking through what brand goals are. And the technology tends to just be an enabler around those goals rather than a driver of them. Like, because you can pay for something in a bot doesn't necessarily mean for every bot that you should be selling things, right? So we think content strategy is really important. We spend a lot of time on it. A couple other strategy questions that come up front, like for some brands, they're really thinking about this as a creative canvas. This is an augmented channel for them to create content, to drive engagement, to bring user delight. Most of the marketers that we work are thinking about trying to drive emotional connection, right? And if you think about trying to make a bot drive an emotional connection, it's actually a really hard challenge. It's a lot easier to make an emoji keyboard, right? And get them to share that with their mom or their sister in iMessage. Getting a bot to surprise and delight a consumer is a really, really difficult challenge. So we think a lot about that. We spend a lot of time on it. Is this kind of a utility? I think Ted's going to be presenting from Kick later, and he's written extensively about ephemeral bots using chat codes and those launching application experiences inside events. Like, we're huge fans of those types of user experiences. Like, can bots be an assistant for a relatively small period of time for a consumer? Like, I think most bot builders think about this as like, this is going to be an evergreen platform. We're going to continue to grow audience in this and pipe new content into it. Consumers are going to come back day over day. And I don't think that that's necessarily the right answer for every use case, for every campaign. Are you trying to replace your app? And if so, can we remove 90% of the functionality that most consumers don't use inside your app and just focus on one? Are you just thinking about this as email, right? Where you're gonna see higher open rates, and if so, you should really reconsider your strategy. And then also, who do you want to reach? There are a number of messaging platforms just in the U.S. market, and when you look globally, that triples. If you're trying to reach teens in the U.S., like, the answer is fairly obvious, and Kik is an amazing platform to do that. Slack is great for enterprise. It's great for B2B. It's great for utility use cases. So again, helping think through what the actual brand goals are and how you want to bring through a user is important. And one sort of semi-comical sidestep, I would say brands are really risk averse. So I think a lot of times there's kind of this adage in the advertising industry that people want proven first in market experiences, right? So it's kind of an oxymoron. You can't really do that. This doesn't matter for Microsoft because they're a technology company. They're supposed to be pushing the limits of what is capable. They're supposed to be putting things out in the world that are innovative and bleeding edge. Consumer brands, stories like this and screen grabs of consumers putting snarky comments and breaking bots, going onto social media is a huge problem for them. So while brands want to be innovative, they also really want to be brand safe. You know, a lot of the goodwill of a company's valuation is put into its brand. The people that we work with think a lot about it, and their first order of priority is to do no harm. So, you know, I think when we first started, we were doing a lot of free text, keyword-based, triggered response bots, and as we've sort of moved through the world, I think we're doing a lot more around structured content using buttons. It brings people down a funnel that's more measurable. Yeah, it's technologically not as sexy, but I think we have learned that that's been much more effective for our brands and the way that they kind of want to roll out, particularly because this is a new area. They need to start to get some data. They need to learn, and they need to have success in order for them to continue to invest in this channel. So we try to be really mindful about the experiences that we're doing and mindful about how we define the metrics that are going to define success for those brands. So I'll quickly walk through like 5 executions that we have in market, and I'll try to map it back to where that execution sits inside the consumer funnel, and hopefully maybe this is constructive context for you guys to think through these executions. So a couple of things we have out right now. We've got a bot out for Simon Outlet's Trolley, the amazingly, awesomely weird maker of gummy worms. Bud Light, Nike Jordan, and Marriott hotels. And you know, I think when we originally approached each one of these brands and spoke to them, again, like they weren't exactly sure what they wanted to execute, and I think the default desire is like, we want to do all of it. Like, we want to be able to sell things, and we want to entertain clients, and you know, we want to drive existing relationships, and we want to know more data about our audience, and we want direct relationships with them. And so what we try to do is kind of pare those down to one piece in the funnel and say, let's start here, and then we're going to phase this out over the next 6, 9, 12 months, increasing the level of technical capabilities that we're implementing, increasing the sophistications of the bots. But let's kind of get out with something that is brand safe, that is measurable, that offers a great content experience, that that does no harm, and that hopefully is providing some value. And value can be a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily mean ROI, right? So for Trolley, they have this amazing content platform that they've been developing for years, and they've got like James Harden with like gummy worms coming out of his ears, and they've got a huge Tumblr presence. They spent a lot of time and energy building this content out. And so for them, they wanted to be early into bots. They wanted to make something that had their same brand voice, and they wanted to drive engagement and social sharing and some buzz. And so value for them was find our voice, and our tactic was, let's start with 4 content funnels. And I think what we learned was, engagement is engagement, right? Like that was their core metric. So we were thinking about not just how many users are coming in as a subset of their overall social audience, but how far into the funnels they were going, how many funnels they were going through, because we kind of had these 4 content buckets, how much of them are sharing, how much content was being shared from Messenger to friends. And so you guys can try this if you go on Trolley's Facebook page, but there's sort of this like, what's your Tamagotchi style? They've got a fortune teller bucket, a would you rather kind of run through. So you can think about this app as almost a really light game that they built. Again, 80 to 90% of the work that we did was really around content development and script development. Users come in, they get put onto one bucket. They can go all the way down that funnel, or they can move over to another one at any given time. This is giving them a platform to create new buckets, right? So new seasons come out, new smaller gummy worms come out, gummy centipedes come out, whatever. They can re-engage with these audiences and invest more in the content experience when it makes sense for them. So this has been a great test and learn for these guys that they're going to continue to invest in. Simon Outlets. So as an operator of malls, Simon is effectively a shell of retailers. So all the retail organizations that live inside a Simon Mall, they own relationships with their customers. Simon doesn't really own any relationships with their customers. They've had email lists for a long time. That's worked for previous generations. They're looking to sort of build a CRM database of younger consumers. And so, they want to drive, use messenger apps to drive mall customers from engagement down to CRM, right? So their end state is we want to manage our ongoing relationships with our customers, who come into Simon Malls. But you can't do that until you bring some people in, offer some value, start to get some marketing data, and then provide new experiences and opportunities for them through the space. So, the start out is they've got a tour of, I think that's Nick Jonas and Demi Lovato, who are going to be touring various Simon premium outlets. So they're driving users in, with effectively a giveaway, right? Is the chance for them to win tickets. There's social sharing up on the top, and one of the other things they're going to be leveraging is when people go to these shows, they're going to be able to launch a chat code. It's going to launch that bot. They're going to ask some questions about which stores they like the most. Based on what mall you're in, you'll be able to sort of launch a map. So again, I think their end state is we want to be able to send promotions, notifications to new users. We want to be able to tell, Simon Outlets customers who are in their 20s about new stores that are opening up at our outlets so that we can get them back in, and we want to have a direct relationship with them. But you can't do that until you offer some type of value exchange. So again, phase one is let's drive awareness about this. Let's drive engagement. And later we can bring them down to action, and we can manage ongoing CRM relationships. So Nike Jordan came to us, and they had they're launching this new content platform. If there are any sort of kind of hardcore Nike Jordan athletes or fans, you may have seen the Jordan Breakfast Club. Nike's the greatest storyteller in the world. They have this platform that's based off of Michael Jordan's training sessions. He was one of the only basketball players. He's one of the first basketball players to train during the basketball season. Now, at the time when he was doing this, it was sort of unheard of, but he was trying to beat the Pistons, and they found themselves to be weak and not quick enough. So he started this breakfast club. Him and a number of players on the Bulls would come in early in the morning. They would train, and then they would practice, or they would train even on game days. It increased their strength, their speed, their agility, and then they were able to win a bunch of championships. So they have this content platform. They were looking to access a small set of their brand fans. So these are elite athletes in high school looking to train in advance of their football season, their basketball season, or their baseball season. And so what we developed for them was a bot that allows these, they call them first-class flyers, to come in, opt in. It's rolling admission, and there's a 30-day workout. And I think these guys were so thoughtful about the way that they want to develop this content. If you're opted into this experience, you get a notification at night. We brought in preloaded a bunch of videos. They come in through carousels. You can see the exercises. Every morning it prompts you to come in and start your workout. It asks you how you're feeling at the end of it. Notifications was really well thought out. The exact audience that we're trying to target was really well thought out. The content that they developed was amazing. I mean, the video content that you can watch in here is really high definition. It's highly visual. So they spent, again, if you were to look at the resource pie, they probably spent 80% of their time thinking through content, thinking through story, thinking through audience, thinking through value. And then the execution just became tactical, right? So a lot of thought up front about strategy. The technology just becomes the enabler for that, right? And they did things like, they knew that these kids were gonna be out in soccer fields, so a bunch of Jordan employees ran out in the fields and tried these workouts out in beta. We thought through what would happen if a kid didn't have cellular data service in the morning when he was doing his workout. So we started preloading them at night, and we offered these small image cards that you could load up that would just show you the exercises in list form, right? So thinking through all these edge cases around, if you don't have data connection, if you don't have Wi-Fi, if you don't have a great phone, can we deliver this experience without forcing these kids to install an application that weighs a ton? Let's bring this content intelligently into a place where a lot of them are already spending their time and enable them to do these training workouts that way. And this is, again, V1 of a very large platform that they're going to be rolling out over time. So we're really proud of this work. I think it was a lot of work, and it continues to be a lot of work, but it's, in my view, it's one of the better bots that we've built because of the amount of time and energy that we spent around thinking through a lot of these edge cases, making sure that we're providing value to their users, and the data is showing that. Bud Light, totally focused on commerce, right? So Commerce Group wants, they want delivery service for Budweiser. this is a bot that allows consumers to connect with a delivery service in their area based on their market and order beer. This is our forthcoming bot, so I can't give you a lot of learnings, but I will let you know. I'll come back next year. I'll tell you how this did. We launched with Marriott last week. Marriott's another example that wants, they want full stack relationships with their customers. They want you to be able to manage your points accounts. They want you to be able to book rooms. They want you to be able to find content about upcoming trips to Paris, all sort of within a single bot. They want a fully, baked application experience sitting within a bot. The strategy that we've developed around them phases this out, right? So for consumers, I think it's easy for us to get carried away in the tech and the media industry and even on the brand side about consumers being as sophisticated or thinking about this stuff as much as we do. If we came out with 5 different content funnels and pieces of utility for Marriott on day one, that would be, in our view, problematic because we can't optimize to a single funnel. We're not creating a singular content experience. People aren't going to be using features because we're not rolling them out in a sequenced or thoughtful way. So V1 of this was launched next week, and over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll continue to increase the level of sophistication. We'll continue to increase the amount of content that we're putting in. We'll continue to redefine metrics based on the results of each phase. So again, I think thoughtful, reasoned, step-by-step approaches to these tend to be better than let's shoot for the moon with a super crazy technical experience. So 3 takeaways. For brand strategy and creative matter most in this phase, right? Like this isn't a scenario where when we go into brands, they're thinking through specific features or capabilities. Like the market is very much in the strategy phase. People are thinking about how can we offer amazing, delightful experiences for consumers by leveraging bots. Takeaway 2, first order of priority is do no harm. So, try not to put brands into a place where there's a tremendous amount of brand risk, where Digiday or Adweek are gonna, end up putting up a bunch of screenshots. Picture the worst use case being screenshotted and put on the homepage of Digiday, and avoid that, right? So, help your brands avoid shooting themselves in the foot by being overly ambitious at their first cut, right? So again, be as risk averse with your brands, help them push, but manage the way that you're rolling these things out, which is kind of my takeaway 3. Build a roadmap, leverage great partners both on the messaging platform side and on the integration side. So if you're an e-commerce partner, we look to work with great technology partners in the space. We're fairly agnostic. Like we try to look at ourselves as a socket, which means providers around analytics, providers around e-commerce data. We want to integrate lots of it. We feel like our jobs are gatekeeping, curating, and integrating in a thoughtful way for our brands, so that we give them the best experiences in the market that exists for the sector. That's all I have. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Christian. Does anyone have questions? No one has questions real quick? He's going to be out there anyway. Let me come to you. And then we're going to talk about some things in the room before we go to lunch out in the Microsoft Bot Framework 10. Which one? Oh, yeah.
Hey, thanks. Awesome presentation. I'm curious, do you do any human supervision of the bots? And if so, are you guys doing it, or are the brands doing it themselves?
Say again, human supervision?
Yeah, exactly. So if someone says something
handshakes.
Yeah. Handshakes, what's that?
Sorry, so we'll handshake a bot session off to a real person? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll be rolling that out for 2 of these brands in the next 2 months. And that was actually data driven. So we found that as a couple of people went through one of our bots, they kept hitting customer service, they just want to talk to a person. So we'll be putting routing into the next quarter. But again, it was, let's put out this content experience, let's analyze the funnel, and then let's build that functionality and roll it out. I think you can get into dangerous places where if we had done a huge integration, for example, with their customer service desk originally, we wouldn't launch in a year, and then nobody uses customer service or cares, and you spent a year building a tremendous amount of technology and integrations with services that ultimately don't matter. So we try to get people into like, let's get out in the space, let's get some data and analytics, and then let's change the roadmap based on what we learn, right?
Also, did you use a framework to build it? I maybe missed that.
Everything is like custom suits right now. So we're like, using Node.js and building custom productionized bots right now.
Can you pass this down for me, please?
Hi. Well, great cases here.
Oh, hey.
I would ask about the framework and another question. Do you have any metrics or KPI that you could share about the success of the cases?
I knew that was coming. So our brands own all their data, so I can't, without their explicit permission, like I can't share any data specifically for our brand bots. I can say that we've driven over 1 million chat sessions since we started launching bots. The metrics depend so much. Again, like coming back to the original strategy session, like if you were doing, a weather bot, you could make the argument that you never actually want anyone to launch the bot because you're just providing a lot of that content experience inside a push notification. So, like, revisit rates, Trolley, another example, like, it's a one and done game. This is an ephemeral product, right? Like, they're not looking to get people back day in and day out. Marriott's current use case, it's a single funnel, right? Like we're just trying to bring people down so that they understand how they can merge their points based on the Marriott Starwood Group merger. Very simple use case and basically single use right now. So there aren't, the easy answer would be like, oh, these are the core metrics that you actually want to track, but they change completely based on the bot. We do look at read rates. We look at state rates, so how many states people have gone through. We look at drop off. When it is a bot that's providing a content experience day over day, we obviously look at revisit rates. We try to define cohorts of users based on specific behaviors, and we map that back. But it's still very bespoke. Does that answer your question? Does that not answer your question appropriately?
Hi, thank you again for the presentation. Is your framework self-service? So when you set it up
No.
for the brand, no? Okay.
Yeah.
So every time Marriott wants to change something, they have to
Yeah.
ping you guys and you.
Yeah. So, and we're productionizing a lot of that stuff. So, like, we lift services as they need to be built by more than one customer, right? So, like, we started out sort of with the kind of the basic of scientific theory, like we know nothing. So, like, let's start to build these things out in a non-scalable way, and then we'll productionize services as they come up. So, things come up, often like, okay, we need to do zip parsing. We need to deliver different content experiences based on someone's market. We need to deliver notifications to users based on, what time zone they're in, what market they're in. Those things we've already built out. So we'd actually built that out for a lot of our emoji content. So we think about these things in productionized services. And so increasingly we have building blocks to do these things. But to date, the experiences have been so varied that it's hard to just say, hey, this is a single canonical use case, and this is the perfect authoring system to use. So we're like super bespoke with the way that we're doing these things right now. And over the next quarter, you'll see more and more standardization from us. But we the platforms are changing also. So when some platforms launched last year, there weren't carousels, there weren't, quick reply buttons, and then quick reply buttons came out, and then there was carousels, and there was video support, and now there's payments, and now there's web views. So I think if you're trying to build, and again, I'm sure that a lot of people will disagree with me on this from a philosophical standpoint, but I think if you're trying to build the end-all self-service platform to create a bot that deploys across all channels, it's really hard. You're gonna keep playing whack-a-mole with features. And so from our perspective, we embrace the brand first and then think about standardization and productization after. And that may ultimately be the wrong play, right? But I think that we very mindfully made that decision.
Did we do it? We are 25% down with this conference.